Welcome to this webinar on the updates to the American Government High School Framework. The focus of this webinar is an overview of the updated American Government Framework. Before we begin our review of the framework, let's take a moment to discuss the timeline for implementing the updated framework. In June 2016, the framework with updated objectives and assessment limits was finalized and released to the LEA supervisors. Frameworks are supplemental materials to help support the state social studies standards. These materials are meant to help districts when creating their own curriculums. In the fall of 2018, teachers are encouraged to begin teaching the new assessment limits. In January 2019, the new assessment limits will be field tested on the American Government High School Assessment. By January 2020, the new assessment limits will become fully operational. Let's examine what that means for the assessment. Ultimately, the HSA will remain an operational test. This will allow for student scores to continue to count towards fulfilling the graduation requirement. However, only migrating items will be operational on the 2019 test. Migrating items are items that have been written to the unchanged assessment limits. These items, also known as legacy items, are items that have been created and field tested. The new items that are linked to the newly created assessment limits or updated assessment limits, these items will be field tested during this test administration. The dead items are old assessment limits and therefore will not be migrating onto the new test. By January 2020, the new assessment limits will be operational and count towards student scores. Now that we have an idea about when the changes are going to take effect, we will begin to examine some of the updates to the American Government Framework. The updates to this framework started with a work group of Maryland High School American Government teachers in April of 2015. Throughout the year-long process, there were many stakeholders involved in helping to update the framework. Why was the framework updated? Ultimately, the framework was updated to ensure we are assessing the most important content as it relates to the understanding of American government, to reduce redundancy within the framework document, to eliminate content that data indicates a lack of student success, and to reduce dated content. The first thing you will notice is the updated design to our frameworks. Below the course description for American Government, you will notice 5 of the 6 Maryland State Social Studies standards. Standard 1, Civics, Standard 2, People of the Nations and World, Standard 3, Geography, Standard 4, Economics, and Standard 6, Skills and Processes. The standards and the framework together inform the development of local curricula and provide guidance to teachers on the expectations for social studies education in Maryland. The American Government Framework has been designed as a supporting document to help districts and teachers determine their local curricula. You will also notice the inquiry arc. You will notice that the inquiry arc is highlighted in this document on the first page and throughout the layout of the units. If you would like to learn more about the inquiry arc, please check out the webinar on Standard 6. You will also notice an update to how the information is presented in this framework. Unit enduring understandings, unit questions, content topics, essential questions, indicators, objectives, and then the assessment limits. Notice the progression from broad to specific. A document has been created to help highlight some of the updates that have been made to the assessment limits. The document is organized by the Maryland State Standards, similar to how our old framework was designed. Please check out our website to obtain a copy of this document. On this slide, you will see some of the changes to the assessment limits. Please take a moment to review these updates. Please, when you have the time, make sure you check out the entire framework and how these changes are reflected in this tool. On this slide, you will see some of the removed or dead assessment limits. In November 2018, the practice test will be updated to reflect some questions within the new assessment limits. The practice test will also incorporate our two new question types, technology-enhanced items and evidence-based argument set. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about the updated American Government Framework.